Welcome to Caregiver S.O.S. On Air, presented by the WellMed Charitable Foundation, with nationally known gerontologist Carol Zernial and award-winning veteran broadcaster Ron Aaron. This program provides health, wellness, and other information for caregivers who are vital to the health and well-being of so many people across our country. And now, here are your hosts, Ron Aaron and Carol Zernial.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the award-winning Caregiver S.O.S. On Air. I'm Ron Aaron. Our co-host Carol Zernial on special assignment today, so I am flying solo, and we have a wonderful opportunity not only to make you laugh, but to help you understand why laughter makes a difference in people's lives. Our guest from Laughter on Call is Danny Klein-Modisett, and Danny has been a stand-up comedian, a teacher, a writer, and a whole lot more. And we are delighted to have her with us. Danny, it is a pleasure to welcome you to Caregiver S.O.S. On Air.
Well, thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
I mentioned to you off the air that I had a chance on your website to watch your TED Talk, in which you talk about what Alzheimer's taught you about Alzheimer's, dealing with your mom, and how you discovered how to make her laugh and why that was important. So talk to me about why laughter makes a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been a comedian for almost 30 years, I hesitate to say, and I taught stand-up at UCLA for 10. I'd written several books on laughter and family life, and then when my mother became depressed facing an Alzheimer's diagnosis, I couldn't make her laugh, and I was very upset, and I had relocated her from New York City to Los Angeles to be near me and my family. And frankly, I was at my dentist and I was upset about my mother's lack of humor in her life. She had always been a very big laugher. And I said, I don't know, maybe I should hire a comedian, someone not her daughter to make her laugh. And because it's LA, of course, my dentist is also a life coach. And she said, oh, that's a great idea. You should do that. You should hire a comedian. So I put up on Facebook looking for a comedian interested in gerontology, paid gig. And my phone rang 5 minutes later, and it was a comedian friend in New York. And she said, wait, I know someone in LA who wants to work with seniors. She's sitting on park benches. You should call her. So I called the woman over and she came in. And at first she was making jokes, and my mother was about mid to late stage in cognition, and so she wasn't catching most of it. And then the woman did what, of course, all caregivers, what we know is she got at eye level with my mother, and then she told the truth, and she said, I know, you don't want to talk to me. No, you're probably thinking, who is this schmuck just talking to me? And my mother heard the word schmuck and her eyes lit up and she started laughing. And then the comedian, of course, being comedian, topped her, a schmuck. And then my mother said, schmuck again, and they're laughing. It's like a schmuck off they're having, but they're laughing. Like there it was laughter. And then this is a really important point that's actually backed by science. I've learned subsequently that the comedian handed my mother a glass of water. And my mother took the water because trust had been created just from that moment of shared laughter. So that was kind of the beginning of my education about all of this in terms of laughter and cognition and connection and mitigating isolation. I hired that woman on the spot just to close that loop. And she worked with my mother 8 hours a week, and it really did change her quality of life. Like it had an effect beyond the time when the comedian was there, also proven by science. And I wrote an article about that experience for AARP magazine, and I got hundreds of requests for comedians around the world. So, and that was 8 years ago, which I mentioned before we started rolling. Created a company called Laughter on Call. And now we're in our 8th year. We just, July is 8 years. So,
what were the changes you saw in your mom?
Just more available. I mean, laughter kind of serves a dual purpose for us in that it has physical effects. It endorphin release, dopamine, brings more oxygen to the lungs. It exercises facial muscles. it is actually a wonderful healer for the body. But in terms of, cognition, it does create a connection. When you laugh with someone, you're fully present with them. And it's also proven to positively affect memory. But I think more than anything else, it helps break through that feeling of isolation. And I would say that translated beyond when the comedian was with my mother. She started joining in her community. I think she felt safer. And, we can get into the specifics of what kind of laughter creates safety, psychological safety, because it does matter. But from what we experienced and what has been proven is when people laugh together, they feel seen, they feel understood. There's more likely to become friends with people that you laugh with. And so all of that contributed to just a much fuller experience for her.
Stay with me just a minute. I want to let folks know who may have just joined us. You're listening to the award-winning Caregiver S.O.S. on air. I'm Ron Aaron. Our podcast available wherever you get your podcast. We're also on the radio in several cities in Texas and Florida as well. We're talking about laughter and how laughter can make a difference dealing with folks with dementia, and the organization that grew out of the first experience with a comedian and her mom is Laughter on Call. Danny Klein-Modisett is our special guest. Carol Zernial on special assignment today. And so, Danny, as you think about your company, Laughter on Call, that suggests that people can call you and somehow get a comedian to interact with their care recipient.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true. We have people all over the country, and we work virtually, so we do work around the world. And what was interesting that we discovered during COVID was that the connection on a virtual call is significant. It's not, initially I would have thought no, but yes, relationships are built in this virtual way. And yeah, we are available. We work individually. We also do a lot of group activities in person, virtually, where we show up and do highly interactive workshops at all stages of cognition.
And you work with companies as well.
Yes, well, that was the other outgrowth of COVID. I was initially told, well, you have to close because your clientele is all seniors, and seniors were the most vulnerable population. So I thought, well, if we're just going to close, why don't we just live stream something? Not that I really knew what that meant, that I have 30-year-olds that work for me. But so we started live streaming a live interactive engagement Monday through Friday from 12 to 12:30, and we called it Lunchtime Laughter, thinking it was going to be for seniors and caregivers. And then very quickly, perfectly lucid people were showing up who just didn't want to feel isolated and trapped in a pandemic. And so from there, then HR started showing up because companies were really challenged by how are we going to keep our people feeling like they still work for a company when everybody has to sit home. So we started there, then Harvard Business School heard about the company and invited me up to speak about, corporate or senior, it's a good kind of little chestnut for people who want to study business. And the New York Times picked us up and the Washington Post. So we got a lot of press. And from that, now we work with all the big companies for team building, morale boosting, and creating connection, and a sense of belonging, which directly affects retention and productivity and creativity. And as you can see, I can talk a lot about this.
One of the things you write about on your website is folks generally react negatively to the concept of, all right, we're going to do a little sharing here among our employees, and they don't want to do that.
Well, right, because it involves vulnerability, and also because there's a misuse of humor. And this is really a point that I always have to land, mockery, sarcasm, putting each other down, all of that makes people super uncomfortable. And especially now in the era that we live in, it's just politically incorrect. It's just wrong and shuts people down, as opposed to affiliative humor, which is the humor that I teach and I'm very passionate about, which is comes from the word affiliation, and the idea is to bring people together and to feel psychologically safe and to bring their ideas to speak to each other and more connected to each other.
So how did you hit on that?
How did I hit on that? Well, I can say that I really don't like personally sarcasm, and and I don't like teasing and mocking. I'm not very much fun. That's the part that people don't appreciate. And of course, it makes watching television very difficult because, I basically can watch dog competition shows and baking. But because it's so popular, that kind of cutting humor is so popular. But really, when you're talking about building relationship and you think about the conversations you've had where somebody has, said, "Oh, really, Ron? You think that's a good idea?" Like that doesn't make you want to talk more. That makes you want to shut down. And so I think it comes from a personal preference and then seeing the effects that it has on others.
What's interesting, title of one of your books, Take My Spouse, Please. It's
Yes.
a spin-off of the comedian who says, Take My Wife.
Exactly. Henny Youngman. Good.
And for you, when you say Take My Spouse, what were you writing about?
Oh, great. Also good time because I'm coming up on my 25th wedding anniversary. And that book came out of a period of time in a long marriage for anyone married a long time, a 10-year mark. And the kids were old enough, not to accidentally kill themselves. You have a lot of space. And I was like, oh, wow, wow, till death do us part. That could be a long time. And,
Unless you
and
kill
so
him.
unless you kill him, right? And so I thought, well, how do you do that and stay happy? Like, how do you do happy long term? And so I decided that couples who laugh together, like if there were people holding hands with gray hair and laughing with each other, I was like, oh, that's the secret. I want to I want to prove that couples who laugh together stay together and research that more. So that's where that came from.
That was my parents, married for more than 60 years. My dad developed dementia, but even then, my mom and dad would still walk down the street holding hands. And I can never remember them fighting
Wow.
until,
Okay.
until because of Alzheimer's, he became angry at times. But it wasn't
Mm,
him, it was the disease. Stay with me.
sure.
We're going to come right back to you. I'm Ron Aaron. Carol Zernial, our co host on special assignment today. And we're talking with Danny Klein-Modisett about Laughter on Call, her company. And we're going to talk more about improv and more when it comes to working with patients with dementia. You're listening to the award-winning Caregiver S.O.S. on air.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Caregiver S.O.S. on air. We're delighted to have you with us. We come to you every week with a discussion of an issue, a problem, some accomplishments involved in caregiving with more than 60 million caregivers across this country, but most thinking they are the Lone Rangers. We try to bring you the latest information and help that can make that job easier and more manageable. Caregiver S.O.S. on air takes a look at trends across this country. We provide tips on how to be a better caregiver and, most importantly, where you can go for help. On Caregiver S.O.S. on air, we try to give you what you need to make that caregiving manageable and to provide you with the help that can make your life easier. I'm Ron Aaron. Carol Zernial and I are delighted to co-host this program, and we're thrilled you've joined us on the award-winning Caregiver S.O.S. on air podcasts available everywhere, brought to you by WellMed Charitable Foundation.
Hello, friend. Hello, friend. Really good to see you once again. Hello, friend. Hello, friend. Really good to see you once again.
Well, we are so pleased you're staying with us right here on the award-winning Caregiver S.O.S. on air. I'm Ron Aaron. Carol Zernial, our co-host on special assignment today, so it is just me. We're talking with author, comedian, teacher, lecturer Danny Klein-Modisett about her company, Laughter on Call, and how she discovered laughter can be an effective way of helping someone with dementia. But Danny, you were telling me off the air that it also can help the caregiver.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big part of the mission is how do, there's such high burnout in caregiving. And so how do we support caregivers in finding some comic relief? And, initially when I had this idea because of my mother and her struggle of bringing laughter to Alzheimer's, cognitive decline, there was kind of some hesitancy, like, really? Laughter? I don't think so. And so I had to explain that and witnessing caregivers myself in how they manage themselves around, this kind of gallows humor that keeps you going and how important that was for them. And so a lot of what I teach now are tools for self-care and finding a sense of, am I still with you? Yes, I am.
But you're
Okay,
here.
good.
But you're here.
I know. Okay, good, 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 good. Thank goodness. If we go out again, let me know. So yes, so the idea is finding laughter where you least expect it and giving yourself permission for imperfection. I think that's the biggest one is letting go of expectations, and that's something that is a comedian's tool. So it's directly related to from comedy to caregiving, which is if I'm doing because I come from stand up, even though I teach a lot of improv now, my background is in stand up. And, if you say a joke and it bombs, you can't like just walk off the stage and cry. I mean, you can, and I'm sure I did that in New York, but really you have to keep going. You have to kind of reset. And so that's such a great tool for any caregivers, like, especially in cognitive decline, you just don't know what's going to happen next. And you can't be so invested in your schedule. I mean, you can be, but it really is just a setup for disappointment if you're like, well, we're going to do this from this hour, and then we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. And then, and then there's what happens. And so learning that kind of flexibility and resetting. So that's a big one.
Stand up is something I've always been interested in, how you do it, how it works. And in my next life, I'll do stand up. A good friend of mine, Lee Fielding, did stand up for many years until one night he was doing a New Year's Eve show for a bunch of whatever their group was, and they were all drunk. He hated it. He walked off the stage and said, "That's it. I'm done." And he quit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I walked my first set in New York City. I did walk from the stage to the sidewalk and was like, I'm so done. This is not for me. And then I was back the next night. And it just depends on your personality. You have to have a need to do it. If you don't have a need to do it, then you're not going to do it, and you shouldn't. So it's like a personality thing.
How did you know you were funny?
Well, I think when I knew that I was like potentially professionally funny was when I was waitressing, because I had quite the personality, and so people would say, like, why are you, I don't understand why I got to know comedians, and they would say, I don't understand why you're waiting tables, and you should be doing stand up. You don't need to get tips. You could actually perform. And then I took a class at UCLA. The class that I went on to teach 10 years later, I took initially. And that teacher was Shelley Bonus, who'd been married to Richard Pryor. And she was very eccentric, actually a physicist too, brilliant woman. And she took me aside after the first class and said, you're a comic. Like, you're just a comic. You may never do it. It's a terrible life, but that's who you are. It's how you express yourself. And I didn't understand it as well when she said it, although I was flattered and thought, oh, that's cool. Okay, I guess I am. But then 10 years later, when I taught the class, I knew what she meant. There are those of us that are just like, that's how we come into the world. We have kind of a skewed lens, an outsider perspective, willingness to be a fool, and you see that in someone, and a presence and a voice, like all of it. You see it though. You see it. Now I can teach people to be funny. I just can't teach them to be comedians, because a comedian, that's a need that you have.
So you can teach them to be funny, but can you give them stage presence?
Right, all of that. I mean, you can. I mean, again, it's about how bad do you want it? If you hang in there long enough, something will crack that is so authentic to who you are that it will be very compelling, even if you're not the funniest person in the world.
Now, would it be helpful for caregivers to go through a course like that?
Oh, well, yes, of course, because especially the kind of courses that I teach tend to be a mix, a mashup, if you will, of improv and stand up. So because the improv tools are really, really helpful for any kind of caregiving because they teach you not to argue and to let go and to build on someone's idea, even if it's, where's my son? I know he's on his way here and like, no, he's not. But you can say, yes, he probably is. He may be on his way. So why don't we go over here and have a snack and make sure that you're not, hungry when he shows up? Or let's go play an activity until he, and then and when you're dealing with cognitive decline, by the time you're doing whatever that thing is that you suggested, they've already forgotten, they've probably moved on. So those kinds of tools are so, so helpful.
Now, in your TED Talk, you list 4 important elements that can enable you to be funny and helpful to your care recipient.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So showing up, you really did your homework, Ron. I'm
Well, you
impressed.
hooked me into it. You did. When I clicked on it, and I couldn't turn it off.
Oh, how lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much. But yeah, showing up, obviously, but if you're a caregiver, that's kind of like non-negotiable. If you're a good person, you're going to show up. And, part of what I mean, that's the opening chapter of the book too, by the way. Like showing up is kind of it for life. But I noticed my father died of cancer like 30 years ago, and it was miserable, of course. And then my mother died, had Alzheimer's, and the difference is that people showed up to sit with my father until the day before he died. And then when she had Alzheimer's, my mother had Alzheimer's, people stopped after like 6 months. They didn't
Nobody
want to,
showed up.
right. People don't want to be around it. And so that became another part of the mission is like getting people to show up. And if you have reasonable expectations, people don't have to show up for 4 hours, but they could come for 20 minutes and bring a cookie. Even that can touch someone's heart and make a difference in their day. So the showing up is a big one, and how you show up, and that the statistics are pretty strong about if you're a depressed caregiver, that the cognitive decline and all the decline in general is about 10% faster than if you're able to find a way to show up not depressed. And so self-care, that's why self-care is so, so important. The second tool is knowing your audience. Really important to, in this context, what it means is to not have the expectation that the person's going to be who you think they should be. They're not going to be that. They're going to be who they are right now in this moment. So asking questions and staying present. Yes. Did you have something? I felt like you wanted to say something.
No, that's cool. And when you think about in the present, recognizing who they are, folks who are helping to care for someone with dementia, rather than fighting when they say, I'm the King of England, address them
Right.
as Your Majesty.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
For folks who want to learn more about you and about your organization, Laughter on Call, and your books, where do they go?
Laughteroncall.com is a great place to start. There's also kleincomedy.com, kleincomedy.com. And if you want to just reach out to me with any questions, I'm certainly open. Dani, Dani, at laughteroncall.com.
Sounds perfect. Are you still doing stand-up, or that's in your past?
I don't do a lot of stand-up, mostly because what the comedy audiences are primed for are not things I want to talk about. So I mostly do now like TED type events. Like I'm doing a big event in Arizona for the Cancer center there, the Cancer Foundation in Scottsdale. I like doing speaking and a little more educational than just, yeah.
I got to stop you right there. We're flat out of time. So Danny Klein-Modisett, thank you so much for sharing Laughter on Call. And thank you all for listening to the award-winning Caregiver S.O.S. On Air.
The executive producer for Caregiver S.O.S. On Air is Daniel Calderon. The producer is Sharice Pendleton. And the associate producer is Catherine Oglesby. We'll see you next week on Caregiver S.O.S. On Air.
You've been listening to Caregiver S.O.S. On Air, an exclusive presentation of the WellMed Charitable Foundation. We welcome emails with suggestions and comments on this program at radio@wellmed.net. Join co-hosts Carol Zernial and Ron Aaron next week for more on caregiving, improving the health and well-being of caregivers and their care recipients everywhere. For more on caregiving and podcasts of our programs, visit caregiversos.org.